I would like to go ahead and call this Board of Supervisor meeting for Halfmoon Township, July 9th. If we could all stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is across the room here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I did want to state that all 5 of the supervisors are in attendance. We have Chuck Beck and Patty Hartle online, Dave Piper, Bob Strauss, and myself here in person. So on the agenda is a leftover item from last week, which was a moment of silence. That was from last week, so that should have been removed from the agenda. So if anyone's following along there, that was from last week. We have some opening announcements. Denise, our township manager, will go ahead and do those.
They're basically the same announcements we've had, which is the census is continuing for the rest of the year, and I have to say, in the census race, Halfmoon is by far on top, so congratulations to everybody for self-reporting. Riff Raff Days again has been rescheduled to October 2nd from 8 to 4 and the 3rd from 8 to 3. And CNET is being recorded live on the YouTube channel, so if you would like to join us live, you can go to YouTube and type in CNET 1, and you'll see us, is it not? It's
CNET Center County.
CNET Center County, and you'll see our live stream right there. You can put comments in there if you'd like, or you can join the webinar and have comments in the webinar as well.
Great. Okay. Next up is an opportunity for citizen comments. So if we have any citizens, yes, if you would please come up to the table, right there where the microphone is, yes. And then just state your name. We like to know where people live too, so if you want to tell us where you live.
My name is Laurie Strauss. I live on Smith Road. I have lived in Halfmoon Township for 11 years. I'm an early childhood educator, and my background is in anti-bias education. I would like to talk with you a little bit about the Black Lives Matter resolution that didn't pass last week. So I prepared a statement that I was hoping to read to you.
Sure.
I wanted to talk with you about these resolutions, specifically pertaining to demanding racial justice, equity, and action, and recognizing June as Pride Month also. When resolutions that promote inclusivity aren't adopted, it directly contributes to the marginalization of some of our community members. They remain unseen and unsupported. Through resolutions that honor people, cultural heritage, or events, you have the opportunity to offer something beautiful. You have the opportunity to validate and provide a sense of belonging, a recognition of our shared humanity. Unfortunately, when communities don't say out loud statements like Black Lives Matter, it leaves room for misinterpretation around values and creates a safe space for those who advocate and act against people of color and other underrepresented groups. I acknowledge that a broader resolution targeting discrimination passed, which is good, but unfortunately seemed to create an easy out in this situation. It prevented the board from having to really discuss human differences and stopped you from having to think in a more nuanced way about the specific needs of different members of our community, specifically those who identify as Black, LGBTQ, or through intersectionality, both. The predominant theme in the conversation was equality, not equity, which is rooted in a foundational misunderstanding. In order to achieve equality by offering everyone the same treatment, we must be starting from the same place. Because we are not on level ground, it is necessary and right to raise up those in our community who are asking that we honor their civil and human rights. I'm not sure if you are aware, but this community has a Confederate flag flying in front of a private residence, and another member of our community has anti-immigrant postings and is not so secretly advertising the desire to form a secret police group. The position that the board took in its last session did not tell them that this board, as representatives of our community, feels strongly about upholding its previous denouncement of white supremacy, as was written in the resolution that failed to pass. By instead adopting a resolution that removed language specifically acknowledging anti-Black racism, you didn't promote fairness. You maintained the status quo. The human experience is vast and nuanced. There aren't two people anywhere who move through the world in the exact same way or see through the same lens. Every person, every family has a unique culture. I encourage you to proceed in your decision-making on behalf of this community with that understanding. Affirmation that Black Lives Matter might not feel as necessary to you as it does to a Black resident in a predominantly white community. As members of local government with the power to make decisions that impact the lives of your constituents, I encourage the board to pursue educational opportunities involving diversity, equity, and social justice. It is especially important that you increase your comfort level in talking about human differences so that your conversations can involve multifaceted thinking. In the last discussion that happened on race and sexual orientation in this room, I perceived the conversation to be teetering on the edge of familiar narratives around colorblindness, promoting the idea that we are all the same, and I have friends that fit that demographic. I also sensed that there was trouble in drawing a contrast between the weight of a resolution involving human rights issues like racial injustice and opt-in values or opt-in activities like Little League and cycling. Having said all of that, there needs to be a positive action step to start us moving forward toward a more equitable future. I would like to see the board reconsider Mr. Merritt's resolution demanding racial justice, equity, and action with some additions. I propose the organization of a citizen advisory group to support the board's understanding of issues related to equity and diversity within our community. As I look around this room, it's obvious to me who is missing, and if they are missing, so are their voices and so are their perspectives. I propose, in order to identify any specific, I propose that our community, I'm going to start that part over. I lost my place. I propose that in order to make our community more inclusive and welcoming, the Citizen Advisory Group is tasked with identifying, my glasses keep fogging up.
That's
Is
okay.
tasked with making our community more inclusive and welcoming by identifying specific policies and practices that may lead to unequal outcomes for members of our community. I also suggest that when making decisions around issues regarding diversity and inclusion and the social climate of our township, including perceptions of safety, both physical and psychological, that the board allows the proposed citizen advisory group the opportunity to have voice and to make recommendations. It's my hope that by adding more diverse perspectives, we can work together to make this a community that affirms human dignity rather than one that denies it. Thank you for your consideration. I brought copies of the amended resolution to share with you.
Thank you.
Before we continue, can I just make a quick announcement?
Yes.
That we would like everyone to sign in so we have a proper record of everybody who's in attendance.
Just going to leave those there so I don't.
Oh, thank you. Yes,
get
that's
too close.
fine. Thank you. I will just say you've given us a lot to think about. I certainly appreciate the comments because I've stated many times my personal opinion of resolutions. You actually provided some potential action points. That's what I would look for, to have more meaning to the community. And I've struggled with this over the years of my involvement in local government, with the effort that goes into writing a resolution and then what happens to it afterwards. And I've heard both, and I appreciate the citizen comments because I have heard citizens say the fact that you are having the conversation is meaningful, and everybody agreeing to that resolution is a step that is meaningful. So I still struggle with what the overall benefit is. I want to see more. So I appreciate that you brought forth something more that we could do, like a citizen advisory group and some education and things like that, that actually bring to life the words on the resolution. And that's what I always am looking for, not just to pass the resolution, to state it in a meeting and then it goes away, but to bring those words to life and meaning. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And I hope that this conversation can continue.
Yes, thank you very much. Next, yes. Who's next?
Mark comes up. Mark,
Yes.
you're welcome to come up. That we had a comment on that from Amy Marshall saying it was a beautiful statement and I hope to support it in any way possible.
Lovely, thank you. And you know the drill. State your name.
You know the drill.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Supervisors, it's neat to be back in here. I am here to support.
Can you please state your name?
I'm sorry, geez, I messed it up
Yes,
right
it's
off
all
the
right.
bat.
You're not
How
rusty
about
already.
that? I am. I've never been on this side of the fence. Mark Stevenson, Chanelli Drive, Halfmoon Township.
Thank you.
And I'm here to support the proposal for the resolution that was just presented. And I just want to encourage the board and the staff to not think about an issue like Black Lives Matter as a political issue. This is a human issue, and this is an American issue, and this is a unique, special American moment that comes along maybe once every half a millennia, that we as a nation and in little corners of our nation like Halfmoon Township can do something incredibly impactful for people. A lot of folks get hung up on the notion of Black Lives Matter. They think it's somehow some type of an exclusionary statement. But really, the longer message is that Black lives have to matter to each of us as much as white lives have always mattered to all of us. It's a little bit hard to put on a t-shirt or a road sign. So, you know, Black Lives Matter really, to me, encompasses that concept. And as I said, I think we have an opportunity here to do something for people of color in our community that not only makes them feel accepted, because I think we do a pretty good job in Halfmoon Township of welcoming and accepting people of color. And we do have a few families of color here. But I think we have an opportunity through some of the action steps in this resolution to make it a place of belonging, which is a little different than acceptance and tolerance. And so, you know, if you think about Black American story in our country, it is truly an amazing American story. Never have so many endured so much for so long, for so little progress in the overall scheme of things, and yet still want to be part of this country, want to be full members who feel a sense of belonging. And I think it's incumbent upon us in our corner of the world to sponsor something like educational speaker series. We draw from the resources of this wonderful community that we live in to help educate those of us who would simply like to learn a little bit more and to express that sense of belonging to people. I think it's great to have a citizens advisory committee that would help build that program. And I think it starts with this resolution. So I just encourage you, as a former member of the board, take this resolution, make it our own. If you have to, you know, wordsmith it a little bit to make it more reflective of some additional views, that's great. But I really encourage you to do this as an important step that we can build on as a community and move forward. And I think if we do that, I think this is only a positive thing for our community, for people of color, for others in the community that are hungry to learn and grow. So with that, I'll end my piece.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Yes, Andy.
Parade of retired supervisors.
Andy Merritt, 170 James Hill Road. What Lori, correct? That was just absolutely fantastic, and I really appreciate that. And I can't support what she said enough. It's just wonderful what you said. So thank you so much. The eloquence is just beautiful. Mark, thank you too. Along that lines, I'm going to change the channel here in a second, but I don't know if anybody's seen that video of the fire where the young white child is thrown off a third-story balcony, and you see a guy just race up and grab her. He was a young African-American man. He didn't care. He didn't care. He saw somebody in need and just rushed in to help. And another man went through the door into the burning apartment on the third floor. That's who we really are. And we need to recognize the value of all of us and raise up people who have been continually pushed and pushed and pushed. And I just can't say that enough. And last time I was here, Denise said to me, can you do something? And I'm really glad Lori added some action items. I spoke with a retired teacher from State College High School who's an expert on the Confederacy, Confederate monuments, and the Confederate flag. And she's very willing to come speak. She wants to come speak. And she has this really cool West Virginian accent, and so it's really kind of cool. So I didn't come for that reason, and I'm going to change the channel here, but that was absolutely fantastic. First off, thanks everybody for wearing masks. You know, as I told you a couple weeks ago, it's very personal to me. These are thank yous. Scott and Mike, roads are looking great.
No?
And Denise, that budget summary last week was fantastic.
Yay.
Thank you so much for that. It was so easy to follow and understand. And I'm not an economist, but I got it. And that leads me to the reason I'm here tonight. At the last meeting, Supervisor Piper mentioned just kind of threw it out there, that, you know, we're in a budget issue. We have a budget issue. And possibly a tax increase or something. We're going to have to find ways to find revenue. My suggestion is the open spaces program. And I sent you all an email on that. And I think it's time to revisit that. In full disclosure, I voted for it 20 years ago. I didn't research it 20 years ago, and I wish I had. And I don't know, I should have called ahead of time. Do you know how much is in the account? I know Amy would know.
We have two accounts. One account is a reserve of about 424,000, and another account is our operating account, which
Correct.
has just over 100,000.
Right. So my thought is, right now, if you don't understand how, for anybody paying attention, doesn't understand how the open spaces program works, we're paying taxpayer money to people to continue to farm their property and use their property in a sense so that they can't develop their property. That's the give back to us. They can't develop. The problem with that is if we lock that land up, or large parcels of land, we're going to become tax starved over time. If more people really want to get into that program, we're tax starved. And then the taxes are then passed on to the other citizens who aren't in the program and end up paying other citizens money to continue using their property. And if I'm right, and I wish Amy were here because she would know, I think some of the properties are eligible for clean and green as well.
Yes.
So they're not only getting money from us, they're also getting a tax cut so thereby it limits what we take in to begin with. It's out there. So here's what I suggest. This is my suggestion. Put a moratorium on all future open spaces properties, starting like now. Work towards another referendum. I don't think it's bad to revisit something 20 years later and say, hey, are we still okay with it? If the citizens vote for it, fantastic. That's fantastic. And then we'll just continue on with it. I would suggest, and again, this would have to go through the legal side, you'd have to talk to Jeff or the solicitor on how to handle that 2 mil levy. And that is then put into the general fund. And I'm not saying it'll fix the problem, but it begins to address the problem. And again, if the citizens vote to keep the open spaces program, that's fantastic. That's what it's about. But if they say, well, maybe it's time to change it or end it, and then we find a way to end it, we end it. And then it alleviates our financial burden a bit. So that's what I have for you.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add
Yes.
to as clarification? You're not suggesting that we somehow terminate the existing leases?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my suggestion, because I thought.
I just wanted to clarify for anyone
So,
watching or,
well,
you know.
here's, my thought is, if you were in the program, if you took an advance, 20 years advance, 20-year advance, and you're 5 years into that advance, I am suggesting it, that then you have 15 more years on that lease. So you took the 20-year, you got the money up front. For anybody else who's taken the money without the advance, it ends. They've gotten their pay, they've gotten what they've gotten their money. 100-acre parcels, $32,000 a year, or $33,000 a year. If they've been in it 10 or 12 years, that's some pretty nice money. So I am suggesting it, Dave, that we end it, but we do it legally.
Yeah,
through
that we have some legal hoops to jump through on that.
No doubt,
About
no
a
doubt.
year ago, I proposed something similar.
Yeah.
And it was not very well received.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't have my perspective of it
Right.
correct either.
Yeah.
Which is something I kind of suggested at one point,
Yeah.
and a few people came to the next meeting and had some choice words for me. I do agree that addressing our budget shortfalls with something like that, it's in some way is a good idea, because for one, we are running out of properties to even bring into the program.
Right.
The program's been in place for 20 years, so
Yeah.
a lot of these folks, they've had their opportunity. If you're not in a program yet, then
Right.
you've had your chance.
Right.
And we do need to address our revenue issue and our our budget shortfalls that we are anticipating.
And I
so.
knew in a while, when I was on the board, for a while, we had actually put a moratorium on properties coming in for a
Yeah.
couple years. Because there really weren't any, and we were debating at that point what to do, how do we, is everybody in who wants to be in? Have we run out, has it run its course? And then it just, I think it just,
Well, thank you
Back
for the
burner.
suggestion again. We are gonna have our strategic session
Yeah.
coming up. Preserving space, preserving
Yeah.
land is going to be part of that. So it's not just financial. Our strategy for that is we wanna preserve as much property, as much
Sure.
land in the township. So that will be on our strategic agenda
Sure.
to discuss, and we'll go from there and see
Thanks.
what happens. Thank you
thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Thanks,
Thank
Andy.
you.
And one thing to
Yeah,
add on that,
Yeah,
100 times $32 is $3,200, not
Thank you.
32,000.
okay.
A substantial difference.
Little math for us.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say John Ruiz on our YouTube channel
Yes.
has made a comment. I think it has to do with the comments from Andy previously, but it says adding names to the prayer board at church does not divide us and does not detract from those who are not on the board. Similarly, calling out BLM is not divisive. It supports people in need.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone else that has comments from the public? Is there anything else online to read? Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's
Just wanna
okay.
make
Takes a
sure
minute to
before we
click
move
through them all.
along.
Not seeing any other comments.
Okay. All right, so that will end our public comment period. Next up, we have the approval of the agenda for this evening. So we have the agenda as it stands. One thing that I am going to suggest, and this will be subject to vote and approval, but I would like to add the resolution for discussion for tonight's agenda. So we would need the resolution passed out so that we could read it. And I don't know actually, well, yeah, we could still have Patty and Chuck online because then we could read it. They
Yeah,
wouldn't have a
but
physical copy,
There are
but,
some changes to it, from what I understand, to
Okay.
what was given to us a couple of weeks ago, so.
so that's my suggestion, that we add that topic to the agenda. Other than that, is there anything else for the agenda?
I'd
So,
like to not add it to the agenda. And the reason being, I don't know where in the township code that it says we should be voting on any of that stuff.
any of what stuff?
The resolution that was proposed.
What do you mean? We voted on one last week.
Which agenda or resolution are we talking about?
Well, we're gonna see what this one is, for discussion. It's gonna be up for discussion tonight. We don't have to vote on it tonight, but we could discuss it
Well,
tonight.
we got a full agenda tonight, and I don't know that it needs to be done right now, does it?
No.
I mean, whether
or
we vote
yes.
for it or against it, or do this or do that, it really, in the big scheme of things, it's Halfmoon Township. We're less than 3,000 people. We don't mean much out here.
I don't
Huh.
see any reason why we
That's
can't have
sad.
a discussion on it this evening.
Yeah, and you can vote no for that.
Well, I'm
on
talking
the
about in
agenda.
the world view here.
No, I
but-
understand, but what I'm saying is, I'm suggesting to add it to the agenda. If you don't wanna do that, vote no on the agenda.
Well, then I would vote against the whole agenda then.
That's correct,
Okay, well, so be it.
okay?
I move that we approve tonight's agenda with the addition of the resolution presented by Ms. Laurie Strauss.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Patty. Is there, well, we had some discussion. Is there any other discussion about the agenda? All those in favor of the agenda with the addition of the resolution discussion, not to say that we would approve it, just to have the discussion, signify by saying aye.
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 Patty?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay,
Chuck?
Nay, yay or nay, Chuck?
Chuck Beck? Yay or nay? We have 3 yays?
3 yeas.
Yes.
Okay, so
passes by default. so.
we will have the discussion on the resolution as well. And I'm not sure where we want to put that on the agenda.
I just put it under new business D.
New business, sounds great, thank you. Okay, great. So we have subdivision or land development plan is gonna be postponed, correct?
That is correct. Mr. Houts is working with our SEO to resolve some of those issues, so we would like to table that.
Okay, so that will be probably at our next meeting. So next up is the approval of the minutes from our June 25th meeting. If we can have a motion to get those going.
I move that we approve the minutes from the June 25th meeting.
Second?
Before we go into discussion,
I'll second.
Thank you.
sorry.
Is there any discussion? And Denise, I think there was one correction.
Yes, it's one correction that will ripple through. The resolution number that we had discussed, resolution 16, is actually going to be 17. So we'll make the change in that minutes. And then the one that Andy brought up would be 18. And so there's 3 changes to the minutes where it's just going to change from 16 to 17 and from 17 to 18. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion about the minutes, corrections? All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Okay, they pass. Next up is our consent agenda, which is basically all of the bills that we've paid in the past couple weeks. And the numbers are there. We have general fund, state highway liquid fuels fund, open space, parks and rec fund, and BMO, which is a new purchasing card reconciliation.
Yes, that is our credit card reconciliation. So in order to move everything from, the long-term plan is to take the credit card and clean it, get a nice policy in place, and then put everything back on the credit card with the understanding that we would get a certain percentage of cash back at the end of the year. And in order to do this process, that's going to show up, and then that will go away and be in the general funds list.
Perfect. So can we have a motion to
Yeah,
approve?
I move that we approve tonight's consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dave. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, thanks, Patty. Sorry, I didn't pause. Okay, I think the ayes have it. We approve all those bills. Now we have old business, and I think this is just really a statement about the Julian Fisher open space property. The hearing is going to be on the 13th, right?
Yep, I don't want to take anything off old business until we've actually done it.
Okay.
So that hearing is scheduled for the 13th.
Yep. Okay. I mentioned briefly earlier, the board has a strategic planning session on July 25th. And we need to have a motion to advertise because it is a public meeting that people are invited to. So we need a motion for that.
I move that we approve our strategic, can't speak today. I move that we approve the advertising of the strategic planning session scheduled for July 25th, 2020 at 8 a.m.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dave. Is there any discussion about the advertising?
Just to
No?
note that
Yeah.
meeting will be held here.
Okay, great, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, great. Sounds good. Official map is still old business, still on the list. Nothing new there to discuss. The riparian buffer ordinance.
Yes.
Oh, we need a public hearing, don't we?
We do. We do need a public hearing for this.
Okay. So I will go ahead and open our public hearing on the riparian buffer ordinance. So this is for any members of the public to offer any comments on the changes that we are making. And do we need to pull it up on the screen?
Yes,
Sorry.
sorry. Chuck is having some technical
Difficulties.
difficulties. Sorry, I didn't just find it.
No,
here.
that's okay. Take your time. I was going to say, if Chuck's having problems, can he call in?
He's self-muted now, so
Okay.
it should be working in just a second.
Beautiful.
Goodness. Not bad.
You got me.
Oh, we can hear you now, Chuck. Fantastic.
Okay, I was thinking my daughter said you had me muted on your end or something.
you're good now.
Good.
Okay, so the riparian buffer. Bills. There we go.
And the major changes were around the distance. Would you help me out? Remind
Yes.
me.
So this started back in March when we had Elwood Seifert come in and we looked at his plan just as a consult for staff. And when we looked at the riparian buffer, we realized that the restrictions that were in place were more restrictive than DEP standards. So DEP requires a 50-foot buffer, where we were requiring a 100-foot buffer and additional yardage from that buffer. So we realized it was going to end up being an issue for not only his property, but many properties within the area, and thought maybe we should take that back to the standard that was set by DEP. Staff worked on doing all of the updates, and we went through the planning commission, through our planning commission, through the regional planning commission, and through the county planning commission. And in that, we only had some minor changes, which had to deal with who was responsible for different items as far as who would be checking things. So we used everybody's comments and made those changes, and then updated appendices. And everybody seems to be okay with our changes as advertised.
Excellent. Any other comments, Corey?
No, I
Good.
Denise covered pretty much all of it. We did have a section there where, in our former ordinance that stated use is strictly prohibited. We removed that and actually just added permitted uses. It cleans it up a little bit. And, I mean, as Denise said too, looking at the zoning overlay map that we have, there are many lots in the township that you wouldn't be able to put a building on or any septic on with our current ordinance. So this definitely makes it less restrictive for all of the residents.
Awesome. So if anyone has any comments online who's watching or here, this is the time to make any kind of comments, or if you have any questions about the changes that were made to the ordinance before we approve. Yes, and would you mind coming up here, please? Yeah, so you can be heard, and just state your name and where you live.
Hey, so my name is Lee Schmeck, and I live on Hemlock. Part of my ignorance, this is the first one I've been to
Yeah.
since I've moved here a couple of years ago. What are we talking about exactly? I just want to know so that I have an idea.
Absolutely. Corey, can you give an overview
Yeah,
of what the riparian buffer is?
Currently now, our current ordinance states that within the high water bank of any stream, whether
Okay.
it's intermittent or not, you can't put a septic system within that
Mhm.
or put a building in it.
Okay.
And we actually have an additional yardage on that, so we have 100 feet, and if your frontage is 50 feet, then you have to go half of that back further.
Mhm.
So it actually make it 125 feet, so it's very restrictive.
Mhm.
You're actually allowed to farm right up to the edge of the stream.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it made more sense just to make it less restrictive for the townspeople.
Got you. I was just curious.
No, that's totally
It
fine.
also
Thank you.
brings
Yeah.
us,
In compliance.
well, in compliance, but it provides consistency because it basically has us following the guidelines set forth by the Department of Environmental Protection.
Right.
We were more restrictive than the DEP was,
Mhm.
so we've just basically taken it back to follow the DEP, so.
So it's easy to get to
Yeah.
and figure out. Thank you very much for
You're
informing
welcome.
me.
Sure. Any other questions or comments from anyone in the public, online or present? Nothing online coming through? Okay. I will go ahead and close this public hearing then, and we will vote and have a motion, please, to approve the riparian buffer ordinance.
I move to approve the riparian buffer ordinance is advertised.
Thank you. Is
I'll
there a
second.
second? Thank you, Bob. Is there any discussion from the board? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Beautiful.
That was the
That was
patty
all.
and stuff.
Yay.
Unanimous.
Okay, so we got the 5 there, so nobody says nay. The changes to the riparian buffer ordinance are approved. Thank you. Fabulous. So we do have new business. We have some fire and EMS folks here to give some presentations for us. And who would like to start?
I have on the agenda the.
Who's that?
Let me draw
Oh,
straws.
EMS. Shirley.
Okay, and
Awesome.
I'm deferring to, my husband Jack is the lieutenant at Fort Matilda.
Fabulous. And if you could state your name, that'd be great.
My name is Jack Bonsall. I live in Port Matilda. I am a paramedic full-time, and due to state licensure, I am considered an EMT at Port Matilda EMS. I've been involved in EMS for approximately 10 years, 8 to 10 years, I guess. I lose track over time, but it's in that time frame. And I'm also one of the officers at Port Matilda EMS. So first off, I'd like to thank all of you for inviting us today, because we typically meet with your representative at COG. We try to attend as often as we can. So let me just say that at this point in time, Port Matilda EMS is holding its own. We struggle month to month to month, simply because we can never budget on what we're going to get, because we never know the number of ambulance calls we're going to get. So we also never know if we're going to get paid with insurance, or we're going to get paid for Medicare, Medicaid, or we're not going to get paid at all. So the budget I gave every one of you, you're welcome to look it over. I can address or answer any direct questions on that to the best of my ability. But you'll see a lot of it with income is very, off budget, because we just never know what we're going to get. It's a very hard business to budget for. We know our fixed expenses, obviously, because we have to pay a salary for all of our staff. We do run currently 24/7, 365. We are understaffed at the moment, and that's simply because we've had some college students that once the semester was over, moved back to their respective areas. So we are understaffed, but we're trying to fill those positions the best we can. Any questions anybody has of me, whether it be of EMS or the budget or anything directly related that I might be able to answer for you?
How you guys holding up this year so far?
Everybody actually has been doing really well. They've at least loosened some of our restrictions to us personally with regard to COVID exposure. It used to be for the service, if we had somebody come in contact with a known COVID person, we were quarantined for 14 days, so we had to not work, so that left some gaps. Now they just simply tell us that we have to monitor our temperature twice a day for 14 days. So as a service, we're not losing people to that 14-day quarantine. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of our employees exposed to COVID patients, so it is a struggle. Our other struggle that was early on, it's slowly starting to get fixed, is our opportunity to purchase equipment, or supplies, I should say, not equipment. Masks, the N95 masks, were very difficult to come by for us. We're still struggling to get gloves, extra large gloves, and that type of thing because of the back order. So we're there. I mean, we're getting some help from the community. The N95s, we had several donations from different places. We were required early on, and let me also add, since you asked, the way the federal government and the state government was doing is the rules they gave us changed literally every day.
Yeah.
There were some days it changed by the hour.
Yeah.
So we went from every patient, we had to wear a gown, a full face shield, a mask, and gloves. We had no gowns. Ironically, by the time we got a donation from State College High School
You didn't
of
need
a
them.
lot of gowns, we didn't need gowns in every call. We just needed them on suspected COVID calls. So, but that's a long answer to your question. We are holding up pretty well over there. So,
Well, I guess, actually, probably what I more want to know is finance-wise, how you doing? I had heard that you're, not you, but all the EMS
Right.
and emergency services people were having a very difficult time this year. Of course,
Right.
donations are probably down.
right.
And my concern was, and the reason why I hope everybody's here, is we want to make sure that we have good support to the EMS fire companies, so that when we make that call, that you guys can come out and do your job.
Thank you for asking me that, because that's something that we've lived with it for so long that we tend to not put it as the front line, and we should have. But financially, we are holding our own. We've had a couple nice breaks, for example, one of which is on the budget that I want to mention. It's a plus to help us financially, but it may actually be a negative in the future. But if you see the line item, it says Paycheck Protection Plan COVID.
Yes.
We were able to apply for that PPP
Oh,
loan.
good.
We received $39,575 for that.
Excellent.
The plus of it is we've used a little bit of it to help cover some of the COVID expenses when we had quarantines and that type of thing. The downside is we may be required eventually to pay that back. There has been discussion that they may not, but in the overall picture, we're holding our own. We figure, based on all the donations we're getting from the municipalities and the borough that cover us, the donations that we get from outside sources when we do standbys and that type of thing, as well as our membership, we probably average about 10 months that we keep the doors open. That actually buys us time to get our memberships out then by the end of the year, which basically we're floating ourselves
Yeah.
at a time. You brought up about EMS as a whole. EMS was struggling terribly across the country, especially in the state. There's been a lot of services that have closed. COVID didn't help us because the people that would call that had some chest pain, for example, to use an analogy, may say, well, I'm not going to the hospital potentially to get infected with COVID, so they would not call us. So there in the past, that might have been a call that we would have gotten that we didn't get. Our numbers did take a decrease. We noticed at one time we were down about 25% of what our calls were for that time of the year. Just to make an analogy, I work at a bigger service in Lewistown as a paramedic, and they were down about 50% during the March and April timeframe with regards to their emergency calls. So,
I think another thing that's probably driving your calls down is everyone's home. People aren't out acting the
Right.
fool and hurting themselves.
I
mean,
that's a really good point, but in all fairness, especially in our area, Half Moon, Port Matilda, Houston, that type of thing, there's a lot of aging people.
Yeah.
We don't get, thank God, the trauma and the stupidness that some places get. We do get a lot of medical, and it's the chest pains, the shortness of breath,
Sure.
that type of thing. And people, unfortunately, were waiting too long in some cases. We've picked up a few people that when we start doing the set of vitals, they should have been to the hospital a week ago.
Yeah.
And so, but the answer is we are holding our own at the moment. At this point, we were concerned, at this time last year, we were concerned that by August we'd be completely out of business. That is not the case. And also, thank you for the upfront allotment that you've given us. That helped us out tremendously. That will actually buy us time to get into our membership drive. So, thank you for that again.
And Jack, one thing I was gonna mention
Yeah.
too, if at any point you wanna come to one of these meetings, to be on camera, to be seen live, to give a message, I
Okay.
mean, no kidding, to increase or to market your membership,
Okay.
please feel free to call the office and let Denise know. We would love to have you anytime, and you can speak about the EMS and
Okay.
promote it how you need to.
Well, thank you. That actually brings up a very good point. We started we're in the process of getting a PUC license to do a van, to do non-emergency transports. So for example, Mr. Smith has a doctor's appointment, he's wheelchair bound, he needs to get to his doctor's appointment. We would contract to do that with him on a regular basis or a one-time basis to get a fee for that.
Lovely.
We do not have the PUC license yet. We're hoping that the biggest catch with the PUC is that somebody could deny us that already has one. We're hoping that doesn't happen. We've talked to several of the services in the area that do have that ability, and they all encourage us to do that. If we get that, I would love to come over and promote it, because on TV especially, to get the word out to a larger population that
That'd
we
be
have
great.
that ability.
Fabulous.
For the viewers,
Yes.
can you outline the different avenues to accept donations right now? Is there a link on your website? Is
Yeah.
just ways that folks can give you money?
Yeah, absolutely. And she would know more about it than me. The way Port Matilda operates is we have an administrative board, that's a president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, and then we have an operations officers, which is a captain and a lieutenant. I'm the lieutenant. So some of the websites and those type of things, I know we got rid of our website because it was not, the hits were not there. There was nobody coming to the website. Facebook, I think, has the ability, correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
Easiest is to send a check in the mail.
Yeah, yeah.
But the address is on the Facebook page, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
We
Yeah.
contact
did take-
information.
We were taking like PayPal for memberships previously, but I think we probably still are.
Sure.
But
Okay.
if anybody has not purchased a membership, that's really the best thing, because it protects you from a large bill at some point.
When is the membership drive?
We are attempting to get our memberships out this year, the 1st of October.
Okay.
And if I may, since we are on TV, and to be able to pass along, the way our membership works is that we come out and pick you up. So let's say that a BLS, which is a basic life-saving, which is Port Matilda EMS, is a BLS service. If you need more advanced life-saving, that would be a paramedic and so forth from another service in town. But if a BLS call goes out, we get approximately $700 on that call, the moment we leave the door. If we pick you up, take you to the hospital, and we bill you the $700, and you are a member. If your say your insurance company pays $5, you're a member, we write off the rest of it, okay? We don't go to you and say, hey, they paid $5, pay the difference. And you, some of you may be surprised that the way the insurances are right now, there's a big push, and one of the largest insurance companies in the state of Pennsylvania is trying right now to get a bill passed that they only want to pay us what they call in-network providing, which means that if we sign a contract with an insurance company and they say we're going to pay you, we don't care what you charge, we're going to pay you $500, for example, and you're in network and you sign that bill or that contract, that's what you get paid. Doesn't matter what you raise your rates to. They're trying to get a bill passed that says we don't care if you're in network or out of network, we're going to pay you what in network is. So if it's a $700 bill to go out the door and they say in network for that call is $350, that's what we get. We can't argue it, we can't fight it, we can't do anything about that.
And
Yeah.
to clarify, if you are not a member, you are responsible for the remainder of that bill.
That is correct. And I do want to address this. This may not be popular among the public, but I do want to address it because you'll see our budget. We have become more aggressive with the collection aspect of it because we have seen such a drastic decrease in our income from insurance companies that our billing agency that we use, we've told them that we want to be more aggressive in it. And I apologize to anybody if they feel that we should be out there to serve and not worry about that, but if I'm not there to keep the doors open, I can't serve.
Yeah.
So we are being aggressive, but you're correct. You're responsible for the difference. So if you're not a member, you would pay the difference or be responsible in some way, shape, or form for that. So as a member, if they pay us $5, again, sounds silly, but if that's what we get paid, we write off the rest of the balance.
And are insurance companies still sending the check to the patient to then forward to you folks?
There are quite a few in Pennsylvania, some of the larger ones that are out there, and I won't mention their names, but yes, they are sending the check to the patient and requiring them to send it to us. The reason they're doing that is because they think it forces us to sign a contract with them to be an in-network provider. And I've always kind of argued, if you're going to give me, say, $500 on a $1,000 bill because I sign a contract, but you'll pay the patient directly $1,000, what's the difference? But it's a way to force us to do that.
They're strong-arming you.
Correct. The other aspect of it, and the research that I've done regarding the in-network, out-of-network push that they're doing, is they know we all sell memberships. So they're forcing us to say, okay, you sell a membership, you're going to write off the difference anyways. Why not give you half of what you're expected? So, and it's become very popular.
It's a lousy practice.
Yes. We have, just as a side note, we have been contacting our representatives to help them fight that bill for us, to not encourage them to sign that. At this point with COVID, it's been put on the back burner to my knowledge. I don't know where that goes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just have a question for
Yes.
you, I'm sorry. I would like to know if we can help, how much are memberships, first of all?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was gonna ask that too.
How much are memberships first?
I don't have an answer for you at that because we have to meet to determine if we're going to keep it the same as last year
Gotcha.
or we're going to have an increase.
What was last year?
It's around $65 for family.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was 75 actually,
It may
but
be.
yeah.
Okay.
It may be.
And then can we add that to our website for you for the
Absolutely.
membership drive? And I see here like the soup and sandwich sale hasn't happened, and I can see your fundraising's a little bit down. Anything that you do along those lines, please contact us, and
We
we will
will.
add it to our calendar
We will.
to help get that out for you.
Yeah, normally we do the soup and sandwich sale as
Yeah.
part of election day. That's always been our thing.
Yep.
And we did not do it in May because of the situation.
Yeah.
So it remains to be seen for November at this
Okay.
point.
I would just like
We did want a
to,
lot of extra people in the building, obviously, in May.
I'd like to add for anyone watching that when you do send that membership back with the however much dollar amount it is, $75, let's just say, if you have the means, don't be afraid to double that.
Thank you.
Throw in a little more.
Exactly, let's
Yeah.
keep our
Thank you.
emergency medical service in business.
Thank you.
Because if Port Matilda EMS is no longer there to help us out, the backup is Center Lifelink, which
Correct.
is an additional 20 minutes.
Much further
and
away.
time is important when you're talking about a heart attack or a stroke or any various other medical problems that would need attention.
Correct.
So,
Okay, great. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? We certainly appreciate you coming down. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. And please use us as a resource throughout the year.
We will. Thank you very
Yeah.
much for everything, and
Sure.
thanks for having us.
thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Port Matilda Fire Representative Robert Pryor.
Robert was
Oh, he's not
unable
here?
to make it this evening. We got notification late, so I
Okay.
apologize, but we will be putting him on the August 13th meeting.
Lovely. Then we have Warriors Mark, Franklin Volunteer Fire Company. Who do we have? Brian Hockenberry? Hello, come on up.
Hello. I'm Brian Hockenberry. I'm the treasurer of Franklin Volunteer Fire Company. I know I sent Denise there it is.
Yep.
That was 2019's financial statement. And I also sent you 2020 to date, right?
I did not save it, but I do have it 2020 to date, yes.
Okay.
Cool. So I guess do you want to say anything specific about the numbers, or we would probably have the same kind of questions? How are you doing?
We're holding our own.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're doing all right. We've had to cancel a couple fundraisers, but we also added some wing nights in place of that to help make up that difference. So, we're hanging status quo.
Okay.
Just one thing to note, Brian and I had a good discussion. We did some research. Do you have the signed
I do.
documentation? Okay. So it appears that the township had a fire tax until 2006, and that was established with Warriors Mark at Resolution 2011-24. It was 30% of 0.85 mils of the township's projected real estate assessed value. So that was established at $17,928.35. It stayed at that amount for a bunch of years while we were working on a fire protection negotiation for services, an agreement. That kind of fell through the cracks somewhere along the way. So I guess it was sometime around April of 2019, Sean Kaufman, our EMS administrator, was able to get in contact with everybody and work it out so that we would get back on track with that agreement and facilitate those discussions. It was signed by our board April 25th of 2019 and then forwarded for countersignature. We never got any documentation back, or we were unable to find it in any of our records. But on October 10th, 2019, during the budget meetings, one of the supervisors, it motioned to increase the contribution by 12%, which then passed. So we still don't have a signed agreement, but apparently it's here now.
It is here now.
Okay,
It
so
was found.
the amount that we increased to for 2020's budget was $20,079.75. According to the approved fire protection agreement, it should have been $20,196.97 for a difference of $117.22.
Okay.
So I think we can probably all say we're willing to let that $100 go in next year, now that we have all the documentation, get back on track with where we should be and have the proper fire protection agreement in place.
Excellent. Fabulous.
Yep, works for me.
Okay. So the signed agreement is for the $20,079.75.
No, the signed agreement is actually for the $20,196.97,
Gotcha.
but what was approved for the budget,
Was the other.
because we didn't have documentation
Okay.
for the signed agreement.
So,
Gotcha.
in simple terms, they're making out by $100-something.
We are.
Oh, we are?
We are.
Yes.
I don't honestly have a problem with, I mean, we need to fund these guys.
Yeah.
And if we want to write a check for 100 and whatever the difference was, I wouldn't be against it. I think we can afford it. I mean,
Because we have the signed agreement, I'm okay with getting that solidified on the
Okay.
books.
I mean, it's
and
just-
moving
just my
forward.
thoughts.
Yeah.
We'll
yeah,
accept
yeah.
it gladly, so.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Ryan, I see Warriors Mark Township's listed at 17.5 up there, but last year when you guys needed new radios, and they cost a bloody fortune, how much money did the Warriors Mark Township kick in for the radio?
That was 2 years ago.
Oh, 2 years ago.
Yeah, that was 18. And that was 35,000, I think they gave.
a substantial donation.
Mhm.
Wow,
Yep, yeah, they're, if we need something, they usually support us very well.
that's good. Okay.
I guess I would just use that as an illustration of if you guys need something, please come to us.
Yep.
Also.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You
actually
know,
in this
Warriors Mark's
contract too,
not-
so,
You know, they're not a bigger township than we are. I know they step up really good for you guys, so.
yeah.
And so we would offer the same type of marketing opportunities, voice for the community to be
Yes.
heard. So anytime you want to come here and promote anything, want something to be put on our website, on the calendar for fundraising, please let us know.
Okay, I will do that.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let me just let this here.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, so that's all for our fire and EMS presentations, and we will have Port Matilda Fire presentation next meeting, or August
August
13th. August 13th. All right, next up for new business is the extension of our Mauer-Dussel contract for auditing service for the 2020, thank you all, 2020 fiscal year. Do you want to give an update? Do you want me to start?
Sure, happily.
Yeah.
We had our contract with Meyer-Dussel for auditing services ends this year, so we would have to go out for RFP and get new auditors for the year. What I'm asking is, because of the transition in managers and the transition that I've worked with in implementing in our books, we've been consulting with Meyer-Dussel regarding a lot of this, so they're aware of the changes that we're making, and we're documenting some things so that at the end of the year, we can correct them versus mid-year. So I'm asking the board to approve an extension of that contract for 1 year with the option to renew a second year if needed, but we can always reevaluate after this year. So the pricing for the 2020 audit would be $6,600, and then the pricing, if we would like to extend that contract next year, we can extend it for $7,000 for 2021.
What's the increase for this year over last year?
$200.
Okay, seems reasonable.
And I'm in, well, we can discuss too, but I'm in agreement based on all of the different changes and everything that's been happening, especially the change in manager. Denise is making a lot of financial process changes, and because Meyer-Dussel is familiar with how we
Exactly.
operate, just having a transition year would probably be nice versus having to develop new relationships
Yeah.
with an auditor. So that's my 2 cents.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, we do.
I move that we extend Meyer-Dussel, is that how it said? Contract for 1 year with the option to do a second year. It'll be 2021 and 2022. I don't know if I said all that right.
So
Yeah.
it would be
I'm
for
sorry.
the
I didn't-
audit, it would be for the audit of
Gotcha.
2020.
Why don't I just read it now instead of making one off the cuff? I move that we approve the contract extension with Meyer-Dussel for the 2020 audit year with the possibility of retaining services again for the 2021 audit year. Sorry,
Is
I didn't
there-
realize that was there.
motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion, any discussion?
I'd like to ask Denise how it went with Meyer-Dussel this year. Was she very happy with the services, somewhat,
I was
not so
hap-
much?
Yes, I was happy with the discussion that we had and the direction that I discussed with them and where we want to go. They were on board with it, and I've been very pleased with the interaction so far this year.
They
It's
responded to your questions?
every single one.
Patty or Chuck, any questions or concerns or comments about extending the contract? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Chuck?
I don't know if he's there. Opposed? I'll say, Chuck, are you there? Yay or nay? Okay. Okay, we'll just have to
We
go
have
with the
4
4
ayes,
at
yeah.
lean. So we will go ahead and extend the Malreduso contract for 1 year. Great. And there's a septic liability release, so this is a waiver, correct?
Yes, this was received from the Sodergreen family.
Sodergren.
Sodergren. Essentially, what this is, they need to, their septic system failed, and the only place that they have left is within that 100-foot isolation distance from the well. But they did get approval for a system through the SEO. I checked with our solicitor and he is fine with this. This basically just releases that liability. It actually is going to increase their drainage field too. It is currently 15 feet away, where this will make it 73 feet away. So it's a little bit better, but there's no other place to
Yeah.
do this, but this releases us from the liability. So this has been approved by both our SEO and solicitor.
And do we need a motion to approve this for the liability release?
I would like a motion so that it
Yes.
just solidifies the signatures then.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get that started.
Dave, this is your field. What are your
Well, they've had a
comments?
malfunction for quite some time.
Yeah.
They just didn't want to admit it, and I guess they have to now that they're selling, so.
Okay.
I would move that we would approve the waiver. I hope they put a UV light on their water system there for the next buyers, just to keep the bacteria down. If they do that, that would be great.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, is there any discussion about the waiver for the liability release for septic? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving, say aye.
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 Still don't know if
Chuck?
Chuck's there. He's online, but we can't hear him. Okay, opposed? Nothing. So we will go ahead and approve that. And then the one thing that we did add to the discussion before we do our department reports and supervisor reports is the discussion of the resolution that was provided to us from Lori Strauss. And since, oh, okay, it's not too bad. I will go ahead and read this so that we can get it on camera, and for, like if Patty, you don't have a copy in front of you, and Chuck, so I will go ahead and read this. In response to and in solidarity with those demanding racial justice, equity, and action, a resolution of the Half Moon Board of Supervisors. Whereas we are a nation in crisis, not just of a recent global pandemic, but of an over 400-year history of racist systems and institutions that originated in slavery and continue today in our institutions, our healthcare systems, economics and businesses, our schools, our prisons, and in our communities. Whereas national and international Black Lives Matter protests and demonstrations are demanding that elected officials take action to address the scourge of institutional racism and white supremacy that allowed the killing of George Floyd in police custody, Breonna Taylor in her own home, and Ahmaud Arbery while out on a run, among others. Whereas the board has previously affirmed our denouncement of white supremacy in all its forms, we recognize that all its forms requires us to look at ourselves, the systems we have inherited, sustained, or created, and engage in challenging and important conversations with our community. Whereas we do recognize the deep pain and trauma that has been experienced by many in our community over the past years. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we acknowledge the dignity of Black lives and without endorsing a political organization, assert that Black Lives Matter. Be it resolved that the work of equity, racial and social justice, and safety will never be fully resolved. We pledge to work tirelessly and with full commitment, recognizing our own shortcomings and biases, and to seek input from those who can guide us. To meet this need, we will support the creation of a citizen advisory group. Be it resolved that the Halfmoon Township Board of Supervisors commits to setting a course toward making our community an even more inclusive and welcoming community. Input from the citizen advisory group will help to promote introspection and provide social analysis for the Halfmoon Township Board of Supervisors on issues related to diversity and inclusion. The advisory group will make recommendations for direct actions to promote inclusivity and a sense of community within the township. Be it further resolved that by the way of this resolution, we commit ourselves to move us closer to being a safer, more equitable, and more just community. Therefore, once established, the Citizen Advisory Group will collect survey data to identify any specific policies or practices that may lead to unequal outcomes for members of our community. In addition, they will create a report to inform the Half Moon Township Board of Supervisors about community members' perceptions of safety, both physical and psychological, and will propose actions to improve the social climate of the community. Be it further resolved that we support a series of police reform efforts as pertains to state police services in our community in alignment with those proposed by the Pennsylvania Black Legislative Caucus, and call on Representative Rich Irvin and Senator Jake Corman to fully support these changes. Just as Half Moon Township is acting to improve the lives of all its citizens, we demand action of you. So I'm just going to start, because that's the first time I read that. And again, I'm just going to say, Lori, that I fully appreciate, and this has for me, this is a resolution that I can support because there is action. There is some taking these words and making them real, making them come off the page. So I fully appreciate that. That's my comment. What would you, yes?
I look forward to having a Citizens Action Committee formed by residents who feel affected, whether they be minorities themselves or folks who have seen and recognized marginalized groups, and I'm interested in how that will, the formation of that will turn out. That's about all I have. I fully support this resolution, and as well, just as I supported the resolution when Andy first brought it to us a few weeks ago.
Okay. Patty or Chuck, hopefully Chuck can offer some comment here. Is he there?
Just let me know that his battery died and now the mic won't work.
Oh, no. Does he want to type any comments?
Oh,
He's not
I
coming.
can ask him in a, yeah.
Okay. And we'll talk, if we go ahead and pass this, we can talk about next steps after that. But what other kind of discussion, do you have some comments?
Here's
Dave?
what my problem is with it.
Yep,
Be it further resolved that we support a series of police reforms as pertains to state police services in our community, in alignment with those proposed by the Pennsylvania Black Legislative Caucus, and call Representative Rich Urban and Jake Corman to fully support these changes. Do we have any idea what that says?
I don't know what those are.
Do
and
we support eliminating the state police or defunding them?
I don't know what it says, so,
Well,
yeah.
I think before we do this deal, we should know what it says.
And one of the things actually in reading this entire thing, and again, just hearing it for the first time, that was the only thing that is related, but from our supervisor standpoint, the thing that kind of stood out as maybe that could be eliminated from this resolution so that we focus on our community and the citizen advisory group, and maybe that pauses, because I personally don't know enough about what is going to the state in that, so that would be, somewhat in agreement with you,
I'm a
Dave,
little
that I'm a little
concerned
concerned
as
about
I
that
see they
piece.
want to defund the police in Minneapolis. I've been to Minneapolis. I can tell you they'll probably turn into a free fire zone if they get rid of the police.
Well, I can say that I have not heard any proposals out of the Pennsylvania State Legislature about defunding the state police.
Well, you said the legislature as a whole, not Black Lives Matter,
Okay,
which
this is
The
not
Black
Black
Caucus.
Lives Matter, this is the
well, I
Pennsylvania
mean,
Black
Legislative
Legislative
Black Caucus.
Yeah.
I think
Mrs.
we all know
Strauss, do
what
you have
those are.
anything on the details of that, of their proposals?
I didn't bring any details of their proposals, but one of the things I think is important.
Can you come up to the microphone,
Thank you.
please?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Lauren.
I didn't bring details of that proposal, but one of the things that I think is important for us to recognize is that in conversations around police and funding, when they're talking about when they say defunding the police, I feel like that is a misnomer, because the conversation is really about the other social networks that haven't been getting as much support. For instance,
Financial support, you mean?
financial support,
Thank you.
yes. So, social workers, can often provide support for individuals who are potentially having a crisis in a more, how should I say this, productive way than having an immediate police response. And so looking to shift some of those resources to other organizations who can provide social safety nets for residents over direct policing.
I definitely think that the defunding, people hear that word and they don't go any further, and they think that that just means no money for, like, there's no police. And that's not necessarily, like you're saying, that's not necessarily where it is, but.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of trigger words that stop conversation from happening around a lot of issues around diversity and inclusion, because we don't totally understand what is being said, and because it is so easy for us to become protective of institutions that we love and we appreciate. For instance, the institution that I love and appreciate the most is schools. I'm an educator, and I can tell you that the system that educated George Floyd is the same system that educated the police officer that killed him. And so clearly there are times where we need to have conversations about how our actions as educators and as communities influence situations that occur in our society.
You know that you're more likely to be killed by a police officer if you're white or Hispanic than if you're black?
I do, but do you know that those statistics aren't really looking fairly at demographics? And so, for instance, although white people might be killed more frequently by police, they are a larger number
Population.
of people in our population. And so it's a disproportionate number. We have high numbers of African Americans who are being killed, but they're only 14% of our population.
I understand that.
And so going back to that section that we are maybe uncomfortable with saying that we fully support without understanding that's where I support all of the page 1, but that one blurb, the be it resolved about supporting the police reform, I personally don't know enough about the police reform efforts to make an educated statement on that. So I would be in favor of removing that statement for now. If we wanted to do something about that in the future when we're a little bit more educated about it, I would be
Sure.
happy to re-entertain that.
And then I think even if we were to remove that, when we get our citizens advisory committee together, maybe that would be one of the first things that they
Sure.
put on their agenda, is to find out exactly what the recommendations are of the Pennsylvania Black Legislative Caucus, and then they could bring it to us in another resolution. I just want to add that back to the misnomer of defund the police. The idea is to, as stated, to not totally make police go away. The idea is to shift some of the funds, as stated, so we can have social workers trained and available to avoid situations like we had right here in our community, not in Halfmoon Township, but
Right.
Greater State College, when, help me out, what was his name? Oh, yeah, Osaji?
Osazi.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
father called the police on him.
Yeah,
Okay,
because they
we don't
didn't
need
have
to-
any other.
We don't need to
I don't wanna
debate.
get into the
Yeah, we don't need to
details,
debate
but-
about those things.
But I think we need to know what we're getting into
Yeah.
before we start committees and do all this kind of stuff. I mean, just to press the button and say, okay, we did it, hashtag, now we all feel good. I mean, I don't.
Sure, but the idea is to start the committee so then we can find out what we are getting ourselves into.
Sure.
Because if we don't start the committee and take some sort of action, then we're doing nothing, which is telling the people of the community who do not support, or excuse me, who support white supremacy, that their views are okay.
Can I
So
just
we do need to have some sort of action.
add one more thing that I think is sometimes lost in all of these conversations? So when we're having conversations about diversity and the culture of our community, the people who are disserviced are not only people of color and
Right.
marginalized groups, that white people have culture too.
Mhm.
And so I think if we can bring together a diverse group of voices that represents everyone in our community, it could be really helpful.
Yes.
For instance, I think it's also hard to know when you look at somebody what demographics they're assigned to, right? And so when you first met me, you probably had a certain idea in your mind about who I am and what I believe and about my faith. And so you may not peg me as being somebody who falls into one of those marginalized groups. You may not peg my daughter as being one of those people who falls into a marginalized group. But that is actually how our family looks. And so I think it's really important that we're able to have these conversations so that everyone in our community can be supported. Right? It's really hard to have a teenager who feels as though, you know, they are not validated by the community in which they're growing up in. And the trauma that comes with that is real. There's a lot of scientific research out there around education and children and child development. And so, you know, we could look at this from a very educational perspective. You know, when we have conversations about race and how racial attitudes develop and how children develop, the children in our community right now are currently being disserviced by the conversations that are happening even in this room. Because what they're not really being confronted with is a conversation about how to eliminate stereotypes and to create a more inclusive society. And that begins at age 6 months. That's how early children begin to form stereotypes in their minds. And so when you go through life from 6 months on as somebody who is constantly being devalued by society, it has a huge impact on your overall life and your potential.
So to get a little bit, is there a comment?
There's a comment.
Yes.
Amy Marshall says, potentially supporting an aspect of state police reform in our community can be an action that the Citizens Advisory Group takes up if and when it is formed.
Lovely. So I'm gonna just, to move this forward a little bit with some action from us, I am going to move that we adopt the resolution. This would be 2020-18
This one will be 18.
with the removal of that final paragraph about the police reform efforts. So that is my motion on the table.
I'll second that motion.
Okay?
As
So-
long as we revisit that topic at some point after we can determine exactly what those proposals from the Pennsylvania Black Legislative Caucus about police reform are.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Patty or Chuck?
Chuck
Is he,
can text, but he said,
he can't talk,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take the vote now. All those in favor of passing Resolution 2020-18 with the removal of the police reform effort paragraph, knowing that in the future we will bring it back to topic, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed?
Nay.
And we don't know from Chuck yet,
no.
either way. Okay, the resolution passes. I look forward to, and this is gonna be on Denise's plate to probably help with, Citizen Advisory Group. One of the things that we are looking at doing that can tie these together is community engagement.
Yes.
And so I think these things are hand in hand, because I believe that education alone does not do it. We need to know each other. We need to be interacting with one another, building the belonging, the community. That's the way that we will strengthen ourselves. So I think whether it's a different group or part of a community engagement group, I think that feeds very well together. So I look forward to it. Are you going to volunteer to be a part of that?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, that would be great. And again, thank you for bringing this forward with some action that we can take to see this come to life. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time and
Thank you.
your consideration.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up. So that was our new business. Next up are department reports. So we had some department reports from every department this week. Here's my agenda, there it is. And I don't know how much you want to go through in detail. Do you want to just give the highlights of the treasurer report?
Yep, I'll do a quick
Thank
one.
you.
This is the first time our bank accounts are reconciling all on the end of the month together.
Okay.
So you'll This report, this time is 2 months for the treasurer's report because we were reporting up to 2 to 3 months behind it sometimes. So this one covers 2 months. The next meeting you'll have just the month prior. And so you'll get it pretty much the first meeting of the month for the previous month.
Okay. And it has the, if you go, typically we kind of go to the very bottom and just look at the total
I'm sorry.
accounts. That's what we've done in the past, unless anybody wants to look at some things in more detail, but we typically kind of take a look at the account funds, the balances.
And I can,
And I guess that speaks to the open space fund that Andy
Yes.
asked about earlier.
yes.
Okay. Any questions? We don't have to approve, no motions, this is just, all good? Okay.
Tax collector's report, I apologize for it being sideways.
Yeah.
I don't have Adobe to change the angle. But it's just the same report that you get from the DCED website, and nothing has changed and nothing's out of the ordinary at this point.
As expected. Thank you. And then we also have a building code zoning report, and this is just for our permits, correct?
Yes, so
is all
this
the permits.
shows you that we had 7 permits come in last month, and it shows you the amounts and the receipt numbers and who received the
What they were.
permits. So
Okay.
you'll be getting
Anybody
that
have any
on a monthly basis as well.
Questions about those? Okay. Public Works report.
Okay, I have fantastic news.
Ooh.
In addition to what you see on the Public Works report, we have work starting July 14th for Doe Drive and Centennial Hills.
Ooh.
We have work starting Monday, July 20th for Smith Road, that's the curve widening and stormwater. And tomorrow we have a meeting with our last contractor to set a start date for the third project. So
Fantastic.
they're rolling,
Excellent.
yes.
Quick question or suggestion. Are we planning any external communications on the Facebook website?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that will be going up tomorrow.
Great.
We just got this just happened today.
Lovely.
So we'll be putting that up and letting everybody know to expect road work. And it should all be completed by September 4th.
Okay.
That was in case buses,
Yeah.
but we don't know how that's gonna play out yet.
Okay.
So,
Excellent.
I will tell you that my neighbor, who his driveway washes out every time it rains, will be delighted to hear that this work is beginning, because he asks about it every time I talk to him. So I'm going to be very happy to tell him that work is beginning.
and we started the robotics program. We started the first steps. We'll be coming back with a proposal for signing that, but we've had meetings with the group and we're excited to get that rolling as well.
Excellent.
We're checking as to whether or not that liquid fuels eligible. We're checking with the auditor actually, as well as with our PennDOT rep.
I'm sorry,
And
the
do you-
robotics program?
Yeah, I don't know
Did
if
miss
everybody
something?
knows. I was going to ask you to give a
Oh.
quick update.
Okay, so we contacted a company that does pavement analysis through AI. So you take like a tablet and put it in the car,
Mhm.
and it takes road imagery, and then that's step one, which we're at. And we're looking to do that, so we have a system, an image system, basically like a GIS kind of informational file, so that we can pull up roads and see sections of roads. That has been approved to get started. The next step of that, hopefully, because this is a process,
Mhm.
would be then we do a pavement analysis, and they analyze those images and give an analysis from 1 to 5 as far as each 10-foot section of road. So anything that we get for suggestions for road projects from our engineer and our roadmaster will also then be backed up with algorithms
Yeah.
that we
Some
have.
assessment
So-
data.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
How often do they have to drive around to reassess the roads, rephotograph everything?
That is up to us. The suggestion for most municipalities, they said, is between 1 and 3 years,
Mhm.
but I feel like ours might be, and we've talked about this with them, we might be on the further side of that versus somebody who has a more dense population
Yeah,
or
sure.
a larger
If
infrastructure.
you have heavy traffic, you'd
Mhm.
want to do it more often. We're kind of light on the traffic, so yeah, 3 years or so.
And 550 won't be a part of that,
Right.
so,
Yeah,
because
that's
it's not
not
our
our
road
roads.
to maintain.
Yeah. And this is exciting because this will give some somewhat structural assessment and then can use that for planning of what's going to happen, the priorities of projects and things like that.
Yes.
So,
Sure.
yeah.
And one of the nice parts about this is I've talked to them about the imagery and how wide it goes. So this is for pavement analysis, but we will get some of the shoulders and swales
Yeah,
in those
sure.
images, so that will be nice as well.
Good, great, that's good news.
Very exciting. Okay. Any questions about the Roadmaster report and the activities that they've been up to? Anybody online? All good?
It looks like the crew's been busy this past week.
Yeah.
They've been doing a fantastic job.
We're glad of that.
Yes. Okay, great. Oops, all right, manager's report.
Okay. We have been working on a large right-to-know request that has been completed. We've also received our 2019 liquid fuels audit from the Auditor General with no findings. That has been fantastic.
Good.
That was a very quick, easy process. There was no physical meeting, so we did everything online. And
Fabulous.
that was quick week. We've also, this is something I'm very proud of, we secured a Zoom account through Schlo Library. So rather than have to go and sign up ourselves and do something, we got it for less than $100 for the till March 2021, and then we can reevaluate at that point. I'm hoping by that point we actually have Microsoft Teams set up and have everybody on the exact same IT structure.
Nice.
So if we don't get there by that point, we can re-up with the library. If not, hopefully we're just on our own.
So one of the things I was going to just mention is we're trying to leverage our spot in the community. So basically we have services that we can take advantage of that are part of COG. Because we are part of COG,
Yes.
let's see what others are doing. So Denise has been reaching out to a couple different folks to help with our services. We're a small township. To have ourselves do our own IT and to get our own servers and to get our own email, we have a broader system that we
Yes.
can tap into. So we're really going to try leveraging some of those resources for us.
We pay a lot of money to COG, so we might as well
Exactly.
use every little bit we can get out of them.
And it was very nice. I'll give a shout out to Eric Norenberg, the new executive director,
Mm-hmm.
because I reached out to him and asked him, hey, what do other people do for their Zoom? And he's like, well, you can just use School Library. I was like, great, sounds good. Denise, give him a call.
I do have one question / concern. I have heard that Zoom is notoriously insecure. Do we have concerns about that?
No, because it's all done through the library system. They've got all these things set up that we didn't have to go and we had training with them,
Okay.
and it was wonderful. And they went through step by step with the process, and their IT manager is willing to support us as much as he can, free of charge.
Great,
So
Yeah.
it's been fantastic. We've had a really great relationship.
great.
And I will say there were some issues with the Zoom initially.
Mm.
After so many people were using it, they have made updates to the product.
Yes.
And there's you do need to learn a little bit about the features of the product and how the best practices to
Yeah.
keep it as safe as possible. But it's out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are we looking to use Zoom rather than
Yes.
this
This is our-
go-to meeting
This is our
platform?
last go-to meeting.
Okay, good.
This is our last one. The next meeting will be a Zoom invitation. So please be patient with me as I go through that now that
Well,
Zoom's out the window.
I actually asked some of these questions just as to get proper answers from you folks. But I'm actually very familiar with Zoom. I have it. I have my own account that I pay for. So Zoom is much more user friendly, and
It's very
yeah,
easy.
I'm very excited to be going to that
Yeah.
platform.
Cool.
Yes, so that's been great. We also had the county contacted us, and they passed Resolution 16 of 2020. I did not pull it up. No, and I don't have it up. But it is a universal masking resolution, and they have asked the municipalities to adopt similar. That is something I will put on the next agenda so that we can discuss it as an item for adoption.
Sure.
Okay. All right, any questions for Denise about anything? Okay, great. I'm just interested in working to get geocaching in Autumn Meadow Park.
Oh,
Kind of
yes.
excited about that.
That
For anybody that
it's
doesn't know what
already
geocaching
there.
Yeah, what is that?
It is.
Yes, we were contacted by, I can't think of the gentleman's name, but he works with Pam at Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Eric, I think his name was Eric, and he asked if we would do geocaching, and as a former Girl Scout leader, I knew exactly what it was, and said, yes, that'd be great, and he said they needed a stop, so they're using Autumn Meadow Parks, and we placed a box somewhere in the park, and now it will be part of their Visit Center County
Yes.
website, so more people will be
Lovely.
visiting the park and using it.
So,
So-
it's like a treasure hunt.
Yeah, it's like a treasure hunt.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. And it promotes people to come on out and visit Halfmoon Township
Yep.
and see our park and all the other great things our community has to offer.
Yes, and it's
That's
well hidden
absolutely
and won't cause any
fabulous.
damage, and
Ooh,
so
I'm
the road crew
excited.
is aware
I'm
of
gonna
it
check it
as
out.
well for when they maintain the park.
Yeah, you just make sure you write down where you put it.
Yes.
Very cool. All right, sorry, I wanted to bring that up. Okay, now we have our supervisor reports. Dave, is there any report? No? Okay. We did not, I'll do my reports. I did not have an executive committee meeting since the last time we met. We'll have one prior to the July general forum meeting. I had a public services and environmental committee meeting. The biggest topic of interest, there's a climate action and adaptation planning efforts that include something called a vulnerability assessment. And so I'm just going to read this out of my notes, which identifies critical area assets, so area being the region, critical area assets, which could be impacted by climate change. There's a team assembled, and actually Denise is representative on that team, and they're going to be doing a vulnerability assessment. One of the good things about this is that this information will increase our resiliency and capability to prepare and recover from any significant weather or climate threats. And the information is also aligned with the county. They have a mitigation plan as well. And there's also, because of this, there's the potential for funding from FEMA or other things. So that's the benefit of having this vulnerability assessment.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So,
Like floods and fires.
yeah,
and
yes, yes.
that stuff.
Significant climate activity. So they'll assess basically our region and say what are our most critical areas, critical assets that we would want to make sure are prioritized for recovery.
Cool.
Yeah, so, okay. And then I attended for Patty, the COG facilities meeting. It was held live at Millbrook Marsh. We were socially distanced under the pavilion, one person at each picnic table. It was fabulous. I've been to Millbrook Marsh, but I haven't really walked the grounds very well. It is a great
is.
facility.
It really is.
If you haven't been out there, and it is in need of some
Yes.
repairs and maintenance. So Pam Salakangas took us around a tour and just showed us some of those areas that were the boardwalk that was repaired sort of emergency-wise, but like the whole boardwalk needs replaced. And she showed us the phase 2 of the education building, which is hopefully going to happen in 2 years, and how that's going to benefit and provide more space for activities and rentals and education. So anyway, it was a very nice tour. The COG facilities group is still, I'll say relatively new, but I think it's been almost 2 years now that they've been together, or 1 year, I can't remember now.
I think it's a year.
1.5.
Yeah.
But they had a visioning exercise, so they're still trying to fine tune the scope of what they will deal with as a committee. So they're almost almost done with that exercise, and just some facility project updates. That's about it.
Great.
That's it for me.
Just a question for the Millbrook Marsh. It has been a little while since I've been there myself. Is there still a large portion of the boardwalk that is closed because of the needed repairs?
Yes,
It's
there
like,
is.
it's almost like 40%, isn't it?
I
It's a
don't
very-
know
it's a
how
pretty significant
much,
amount.
but it's a long bridge
Yeah.
that goes across, and yes, it is closed.
There's
There's
more, right?
doors, warning signs, don't go past this
Yeah.
spot. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have any reports?
Yes.
Thank you, Janelle, President.
No problem, Patty.
Yes, just real quick. Let me put on my glasses so I can see what I'm doing. We had a solar power purchase agreement meeting, and we ratified our cost-sharing agreement. So Danelle, look for that to be coming your way for a signature. Unfortunately, every participating entity has to have their own signature on the same document, so it's making the
Oh,
rounds
making its rounds,
slowly.
okay.
So be on the lookout for that.
All right.
Denise, a question for you. Do we have a contract for electric generation currently? And if we do, when does it end? And if you could also research what the cost would be for that cancellation if that contract does indeed exist. Because that's important to go with if we decide to go with this solar power purchase program. This is just kind of a estimate, but according to the chair of that committee, Peter Buck, when he went through this process with the university, they were able, because it's such a large contract, they were actually able to secure, I think he said it was 4 cents a kilowatt hour, which is a very good rate.
Wow.
I pay in my own house, just comparatively,
12?
7 cents a kilowatt hour, which is considered a good rate. So, if we can get into this and get a rate like that, it's going to really benefit us. Second, I have just from the HR committee meeting, we approved the library director job description as Kathy Alloway is retiring, unfortunately. So they are going to now, I think, send that to the executive committee for approval, so then they can advertise for the position.
Okay.
And then the last thing I have from the Bald Eagle COG meeting on Tuesday, the Port Matilda Fire Department was in attendance, and they mentioned to me that over here in Halfmoon Township, they're looking for places, they called them dry fill spots, where they can actually fill their truck over here. The idea is an empty truck gets over the mountain a whole lot faster. So you get it over here, and then you fill it. There's a spot in, and this is for you, Denise, there's a place somewhere up in Trotter Farm that they've spoken to about repairing. I don't have all the details down here, but there's something going on where they want something repaired, and I think it was the developer or the HOA said they're going to take care of it. If you could just do me a favor and follow up on that with the HOA for me, just to make sure that gets done. I'm sure the fire department will be following up as well, but the more people that kind of put a little leverage on them, the faster and more efficiently it'll
I'm
happen.
guessing that's a 4,000 gallon reserve tank
That's what I'm
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with the
Something
cistern
maybe?
up there or something like that.
Because I was gonna say, do we have any other
I don't know that we have
fill
any control
spots?
over it, but
Um,
we mandated that they do it.
Yeah.
They said there's
Can
another one at
encourage.
Saddle Ridge at the trail end,
Oh.
and then Granny Lane,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
the widening of the pad to the park
So,
closer to the fill.
I'm dealing
yeah.
with the Granny Lane one already.
Okay.
That is, Matt Barr's
Yeah.
property. I went over and visited him after visiting Granny Lane with Amy and looking at, it's not wide enough for the truck to get in
Yeah, I
there. So
think
it's a brush issue.
he's agreed to take care of
And,
that.
yep, and I've had them be in contact with each other, so that's being followed up on. And I believe Amy, actually, now that you triggered that memory,
Yeah.
I believe Amy is looking into the HOA and is working on the one in Trotter Farms, but we'll follow up and let you know.
Okay, great, thanks. That's all I have.
Awesome. Patty, did you have anything?
Unfortunately, my computer is
Yes.
battery
I
died.
had, this morning, there was a COG finance meeting. So for July, so I can give a brief update on that. Basically, we looked at PATA's capital, local match plan for 2021, through 2024. And we recommended the general forum would, refer the CATA plan to the municipalities for approval, except for Half Moon. And then we also looked at the initial review of the program plan, and each director walked us through their section of program plan. And we also recommended that general forum receive the 2021 program plan for the center region and then refer it to the municipalities. So that will be one on the executive agenda.
And Patty,
That was approved.
go ahead.
Then we're also looking into, we're getting more information on potential opportunities to refinance some of the COG loans. And then the other plan that was presented to us was the 2021 to 2025 COG capital improvement plan. And we went through that plan, and then we also recommended that the general forum receive the capital improvement plan for the Center Region COG and refer it to the Center Region municipality for review. And the comments referred to the COG executive director by 8 a.m. Thursday, August 20th. And that's all I have.
Okay, and for anybody as a reminder, that that program plan and the capital improvement plan are the start of the COG budgeting process. So those are hefty, the program plan is a hefty booklet that you get that basically talks about all the different agencies and the goals and what they're looking to do in the next year, and that feeds right into the budgeting timeframe, which Patty's gonna be intimately involved with as part of the finance committee and all the budget meetings.
Patty, I have a question for you. Has there been any discussion as far as that program plan to send it out just electronically and not go through the expense of printing all those
Books.
giant booklets on heavy mill paper and spine
letter
and
fin.
yeah, it just seems like
Letter-
an awful
letter
big
answer.
expense.
Yeah, I think once, we looked at it electronically today, so I'm not sure what the end product plan is, but it was, I think, about 100 page shorter than the one from last year. They really condensed it. So I'm not sure if it's gonna be bad. That's a real good question, Bob. It didn't seem like it, but I don't know.
Okay. If you could make that suggestion, that would be fantastic. Not to mention it'll save a couple
Okay.
trees.
Yeah.
I'll shoot Joe an email and ask him
Thanks.
what the plan is.
Okay, is there anything else for good and welfare? All right, seeing nothing, no other business, meeting adjourned. Thank you.